Something happened on the projector.
Oh, you just moved the aisle. I'm noticing nothing. Corn.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then I never saw one of their Yes, never going back to
Okay, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, alhamdulillah rabbil alameen, wa salatu wa salam ala sayyidil anbiya wal mursaleen, nabiyina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'een, amma ba'd. Last time we had opened up and started talking about anger, rancor, and jealousy, and where all of these things stem from and why they're extremely problematic in some of the techniques that we will start discussing on helping us avoid them, inshallah. So the first chapter that we're going to be discussing is the harms of anger. And what Imam Ghazāli actually has done in this chapter is he talks about a number of narrations that he will share with us and talk to us about on why anger is so harmful. And inshallah, we'll have a discussion at the end of class on why you guys feel it's so harmful. So the first of them, here Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, إِذْ جَعَلَ الَّذِينَ كَفَرُوا فِي قُلُوبِهِمْ الْحَمِيَّةَ حَمِيَّةَ الْجَاهِلِيَّةِ فَأَنزَلَ اللَّهُ سكينته على رسوله وعلى المؤمنين. That while the disbelievers had fury in their hearts, the fury of ignorance, Allah sent His tranquility down onto His messenger and the believers. Here Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He says in this verse, how the appearance of rage and fury was caused by an inappropriate anger while praising the believers and descending tranquility upon them. So over here, you see that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He very much creates this dichotomy between sakina, between peace, and between anger and fury. This is something that's important for us to take note of, and it's important for us so that we can discuss this later and what it is that He Azza wa Jal intends by this. Like, is it a problem to be angry, right? That's one of the questions that will naturally come to mind. Showing rage or showing fury, when does this become an issue? How is it something that we deal with? And how is it something that we treat? So for the first narration, a man said to the Prophet ﷺ, advise me. The Prophet ﷺ said, do not become angry and furious. The man asked the same again and again, and the Prophet ﷺ said, in each case, do not become angry and furious. This hadith is in Bukhari. Abdullah ibn Amr ibn al-As, he narrates that he asked the Messenger of Allah ﷺ by that which would distance him from Allah's anger, and he said, do not get angry. So if you want to draw near to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, or you want to stay away from His anger, then you yourself should not get angry. The next one, whom do you count as raqub? Amongst you, they said, one who has no children. And thereupon he, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, said, he is not raqub, but raqub is the one who does not find his child as the forerunner in paradise. He then said, whom do you count as a wrestler amongst you? Any somebody who is? What does a wrestler do? Not fight. Like, wrestling is not fighting, right? It's more grappling, and the goal behind it is to what? To put the other person down. So, and that usually requires either technique or strength, right? It requires technique or strength. So he ﷺ is asking them, like, who's the strong one? Who do you consider strong, right? Who do you consider strong? So we said, he who wrestles with people, meaning that he's able to overcome others. And he said, no, it's not, but the one who controls himself when in a fit of rage. This is the person who actually has self-control. This is actually the person who is considered strong. Allah's Messenger ﷺ said, the strong is not the one who overcomes the people by his strength, but the strong is the one who controls himself while in anger. The Prophet Sulaiman ﷺ said, my son, be wary of angering often. One who angers often weakens the heart of a wise man. Ikrimah, who's one of the students of Ibn Abbas, he said about the verse, وَسَيِّدٌ وَحُصُورًا. Here it's talking about Yahya ﷺ, a leader and chaste. The Sayyid, or the leader, is the one who is not overcome by anger. Yahya said to Isa, do not anger. He responded, I cannot except get angry. I'm human. He said, do not amass wealth. He said, this is definitely possible. Al-Hasan said, son of Adam, every time you anger, you jump. I fear that the next time you jump, you will fall into the fire. Dhul Qarnayn met one of the angels and said, teach me that what will increase me in iman and yaqeen. The angel said, do not anger, for shaitan is most enabled, or he's most abled over the son of Adam when he is angry. Respond to your anger with suppression, cool it with careful ponderance, and woe to you in being hurried. For when you hurry, you mistake your share. Be easygoing and relaxed with both your near and far relations. Do not be proud or stubborn. Any questions on any of these narrations so far? Yes.
The one in the previous page, the last one.
Sure. So over here, this is a conversation between Yahya alayhi salam and Isa alayhi salam. What do you guys take away from this? Or what are some of the problems here? Or what is the issue that you have?
The phrasing is confusing.
Okay, well,
So is it equating being angry to amassing wealth? Is that the context?
so over here, basically the comparison is between two things. The comparison is between suppressing your anger and amassing wealth. So according to this narration, which one is easier to avoid? Well, amassing wealth. So that's all Isa alayhi salam is saying. He's showing us that this is something that is what? Is it easy or is it difficult? It's difficult, and that's all it's saying. It's saying that this is something that's difficult. So Yahya, he asks him to do something that is easier, and he's like, yeah, well, this is possible. This is more doable than this.
But for some people, it's the other way around.
The other way around. Well, some people are just poor, right? Yeah. Allah make us all rich. I mean, so like, that's all it is. It's a comparison between these two things. Wahb ibn Munabbih, he's very much known for narrating Israeliyat. So if you guys want to find out narrations or hear narrations about the Christians and the Jews of old, he was a very famous narrator for that. So he narrates a story here. It's a long story, but it was a good one. He said a rabbi was in his hermitage and the shaitan intended to misguide him and he was unable to. He then called on him and said, open, open the door, let me in. He said, which he did not answer. He again said, open, and if I leave now, you'll be upset. He still did not turn around. So he finally said, and again, this is a shaitan, I am Masih, I am the Messiah. So the rabbi said, if you are the Messiah, what should I do with you? Did you not order us to worship and go to war for your cause and promise us the day of judgment? If you have come today without that, I will not accept. He said, I am shaitan and I intend to misguide you and was unable to. So I came to you so that you may ask of me whatever you want and I will tell you. He said, I do not wish to ask you about anything. The shaitan then turned away and the rabbi said, well, can you still hear me? Did you leave yet? So he said, absolutely. No, I can still hear you. I'm still here. He said, what characteristic aids you against the son of Adam? He said, rage. When a man is enraged, I toy with him just like a child plays with a ball. That was an interesting story. The shaitan says, how can the son of Adam overcome me? When he is happy, I enter his heart, and when he is angry, I can fly into his mind. Ja'far ibn Muhammad said, anger is the key to all harm. Some of the Ansar said, the peak of idiocy is rage. It leads to anger, or its lead is anger, meaning anger is the thing that pulls it. And whoever is complacent in his ignorance will never achieve forbearance. They will never achieve hilm. Hilm is beautiful and beneficial, while ignorance is disgusting and harmful. Answering an idiot with silence is his answer. I thought that was pretty clever. The next one, Mujahid said, and Mujahid was one of the Mufassirin. He said, Iblis said, the son of Adam has been unable to beat me, especially in 3. And he doesn't mention the third for whatever reason. But when drunk, I string him along however I like, and he does whatever I enjoy. When angry, he unknowingly says things and does what he regrets. I deprive him of what is in his hands and give him hope to do what he is unable to. Be wary of angry, it will lead you to the lowest of excuses. Be wary of anger, for it corrupts iman as aloe corrupts honey. Abdullah ibn Mas'ud said, look to a man's hilm, his forbearance, when he is angry, and his trustworthiness when he is being greedy. How do you know his hilm or his forbearance or his sabr, his patience, if you have not experienced his anger? How can you know his trustworthiness when you have not experienced his greed? What do you guys think about this narration? How can I know someone in that situation? Yes. Mm-hmm. Sure. Right. So we had discussed this narration of Umar radiallahu anh, I don't remember, like a couple classes ago. But you're absolutely right. But how do I know when a person is in these situations? Does he mean when a person is actually angry or being greedy? Yes.
when his circumstances should
Uh-huh.
apply.
Right. So basically, when it's a situation where a normal person would be what? Angry. Or a normal situation where a person would be greedy. And he's being tested. He's being tested in those situations. And it is at that point I can actually gauge his response. And if I'm able to gauge his response, it gives me insight into actually how this person is. But if I always see him and he's in a happy situation, if I always see him and he doesn't have any pressures, if I always see him and there are no problems, can I really say that this person he has forbearance, or I say that he's not, you know what I mean? Or he's very patient person, or this person has a good, self-control? No, because he's never been put in a situation where those things are actually being tested. So here, the next narration is Umar ibn Abdul Aziz. He sent a letter to his governor saying, do not punish when you are in anger or when you are angry. And if you do anger on someone, or if you are angry towards someone, hold him. And when your anger settles, release him and punish him according to the crime. Do not punish more than 15 flogs or 15 stripes. Ali ibn Zayd, he said, a man was saying extremely rude things to Umar ibn Abdul Aziz. Umar held his tongue for a while, then said, Shaitan wanted to incite me using my power as a sultan, so I decided to give my share of him to you today, so that my share would be reduced tomorrow. That was pretty good. Some of our elders would say to their children, son, the mind does not think straight when angry, just as a soul does not stay in a burning hole. The ones with the least anger are the most intelligent, if for a worldly cause, the most scheming and planning, and if for the next world, the knowledgeable and patient. Anger is the enemy of rational thought. Anger is like its mischievous spirit. Umar used to say in his khutbahs, the most successful of you is the one who controls his desires, his greed, and his anger. Whoever obeys his desires and anger, they will lead him to the fire. It was said to Abdullah ibn Mubarak, who was a great scholar of hadith, simplify for us good manners in a word. Can you summarize good manners and what that means? He said, leave off anger. A prophet said to those among him, from amongst the prophets, who among you can guarantee to control their anger, be with me and be my successor after me? A young man said, me. Then repeated it and said, I will fulfill these conditions. After the prophet died, this man actually ended up succeeding him, and he was known as Dhul Kithb. He was named as such because he promised not to get anger, and he fulfilled his promise. Wahb ibn Munabbih, he said, disbelief has 4 pillars: anger, desire, foolishness, and greed. So I want to spend some time and talk about anger. You guys just read and came across a number of different narrations, statements, ahadith about anger. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala even talks about the mu'mineen saying, kadhimin al-ghayth, yani those who suppress their anger. Why is anger such an issue? Why is it such a problem? Why is it something that there are so many narrations about, and the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam spoke about, companions spoke about, a number of scholars spoke about, and what are some benefits that we can take away from this? What happens when we get angry? Okay, so we lose control, right? We lose control. And the anger we get, what happens? Right, the more control we end up losing. So if I'm a little angry, I'm still what? I'm still somewhat in control, right? But my judgment is probably going to be, at least going to be a little bit cloudy. It's going to be a little bit skewed. And as I get angrier, what tends to happen? Like, I tend to lose more and more control. And where does anger, or who does anger usually play out against the most? Right, the ones who are close to us. Why? Okay. All right, proximity. We take them for granted. Proximity, right? These are all important things. Well, you regret more.
Yeah, you regret more because your mind say a word that you wouldn't be. You shouldn't be saying to the person who's like family.
I agree with you. 100%. So the question is, why do we take our families for granted? Why is it okay for me to abuse my sister, or my wife, or my children, or anyone? Like, why am I so quick to take out my anger on them versus, so when I go to McDonald's, I'm like really nice with the guy, right? Or if I go get coffee, I remember I was talking to a couple one time, and every time his wife made a mistake, he was like, he kept interrupting and saying something. And then all of a sudden he started talking. They had gone to a coffee shop and he started talking about the barista And he was like, yeah, she was giving him such a hard time, and he apologized and blah, blah. And I was like, it's amazing how you're working so hard to defend this barista, just like this random guy, and you're not giving your wife like the time of day. You're not giving her any opportunity. The smallest mistakes she's being held accountable for, but the stranger is getting all of the defense in the world. Why does that happen?
Because our families doesn't hurt our reputation.
Okay.
Where's the barista finally getting angry?
So, well, you think he's gonna go around and like this? He's like a famous coffee guy.
No, but
He'd be like, avoid this customer.
we tend to hear about that in the public,
Okay, but I'm just curious why. Yeah.
Less consequences. It's easier for things to stay in the household if anything happens. Just people who are close to you publicly, whereas like in public, there's accountability, more accountability.
There's more accountability. There's more accountability. I would say maybe if there was a physical encounter, but if I just walk up to a stranger, like a stranger, and I'm sure this has happened to some of us, a guy cuts me off and I go and I catch up to him. I roll down my window and I start cursing him out. I don't really fear the consequences at that point. And then after it's done, what happens? Everybody goes, like, you know what I mean? Like you would just go and keep cutting each other off, right? Like it's just, everybody kind of goes about their day. Either, or you don't see the guy again, or like he'll speed up or you'll speed up or something will happen, but that's it. So, or even if you go to a store, right? Even if you go to a store or you go to a restaurant and the waiter brings you out and you're like, this is ridiculous. This is, you know what I mean? This is garbage. Why did you bring, like we have this etiquette, like you had mentioned, that if the food comes out, and I don't like it, how many of us will continue eating? Huh? Right? Like most of us will. Those who have gone out with me, I don't really have a lot of tolerance, but like in general, people do. Why? Yeah.
I was just going back to the question about the anger. I think if you have enough taqwa, fear of Allah, you might remember the hadith of the Prophet and treat households, better than be best.
خيركم لأهله. Yeah.
Your parents.
Yeah.
So if you remember that and you try to practice
Sure.
Islam, you might have a manner to keep it under.
So yeah, I don't mean to cut you off, but even religious people,
Yeah, they get angry.
they,
That's what I'm saying.
not just getting angry.
Yeah.
These are the ones who tend to have the most complaints at home.
Oh. I was telling the other one, for example, if you also learn the way to respect, for example,
Yeah.
if you're a Muslim woman,
Yeah.
you're hijabi, you have more responsibility than anybody else
Sure.
because of the hijab.
Yeah.
So whoever cuts you off, or whoever cursed you,
Yeah.
if you act back better,
Yeah.
you're actually speaking for your hijab.
Yeah.
So most of the time.
So I would say Muslims in general, right? The only the difference with the hijab is very apparent, right? It's very apparent. I remember I was having this conversation with a brother that he's like he was praying, on the subway, like he had stopped and he was praying. He said there's this guy who came, he like cursed him out, and then he left. He was like, man, I wanted to grab him and I wanted to like, I wanted to like really beat him up. So one of my friends said to him, they're like, well, if you had beat him up, he was like, you're strong enough to do that. What if the next Muslim he comes across, that Muslim doesn't have the same strength? So many times, I'll get to inshallah. But many times what happens is that in our anger, who do we think about? Ourselves, right? So it's we become more and more selfish. Like as the anger grows, the most important person becomes me.
So
تفضل.
in terms of anger, generally what happens, I feel like in public, is that you're not necessarily angry with handling the anger properly. You still get angry, but you point it inwards. It's like the point of forbearance or hidden is that you feel hidden in general.
Sure.
It doesn't mean like the fact that you didn't express it outwardly is one stage, but if you're actually not angry, you wouldn't feel frustrated from the thing.
Okay.
So it's like levels.
Sure.
And so if people accumulate frustration, even if they don't express it outwardly, it has to come out somewhere, and generally that somewhere is where you spend most of your time.
And that's a very important point, right? So if I don't express myself, so if I am angry at someone and I said to them like, I'm really upset at what you did. Is that a type of release or no? Is that a type of channeling?
A little bit.
I think so, right? I think so. Is it the way do I want to say it like that? Usually not, right? Like it's usually not the way I want to say it. But does it provide an avenue of release of that emotion? Yeah, for sure. I think so. So the question then comes back to, okay, why am I willing to release all of that pent up frustration and anger toward my family? Okay.
Because they're vulnerable.
Because they're
Stuck with you. They cannot protect, they cannot defend, they cannot
Okay.
walk out.
Sure. Okay. No, I think these are all reasonable answers. You were going to say something?
I was going to say the same thing because you're used to, you're accustomed to being vulnerable with
Yeah.
your family,
Yeah.
and they're exposed to you before, and you don't have formalities with them.
Yeah. Well, it also depends, right? Like not everybody's really vulnerable with their family either. Depends on family dynamics.
Because most of the people that are close to you have this unconditional positive regard for you. And so if I snap at my husband,
Yeah.
he's more likely to forgive me, more likely to understand, okay, she's not always this crazy. But also you have that element of permanency, like if it's my mom,
Yeah.
that bond, that relationship doesn't go
Is it
away,
not
but
gonna
she
go
may
away?
never talk to me again.
Yeah.
But she's always gonna be my mom, so there's that element of permanency to where you're like, you know what, I'm not going to destroy something, taking my anger out on this person, whereas if you do it to like your boss, well, then that has
Sure.
the weight of the consequence is
Okay.
different.
So for the first point you mentioned, I'm glad you had that growing up. A lot of people they don't, right? They don't grow up in that positive environment where they have that positive reinforcement from their family. It's very unfortunate for many people that they have like that negative influence. But the tolerance is something that I think is important that you touched on. This idea that our families are more tolerant to our behaviors than strangers would be. What is there more of a threat of in public than there would be at home? I'm sorry? No, you're gonna say something. All right, the humiliation in what way? Okay. So do we really worry about reputation? Like if somebody's cursing at me, do I care about my reputation at that point?
Not necessarily in that context.
Yeah.
but in other
Sure.
contexts, at least for me, it would be like, oh, if I speak up or like say something bad, it's gonna be like, or she's this way or that way. So in certain contexts, yes, but in others, maybe not.
So all of you have touched on it. All of you have touched on it. But I want to see. Yeah.
In our culture, in our group, we don't sever ties with family. Whereas
So-
in like, I think strangers,
Mhm.
even if they walk away from you,
So
they'll do again.
wouldn't it be easier just to attack them then? Like I'm never going to see this person again. I might as well just go all out. Right? I'm just
But you don't
this-
know, like,
yeah, but why?
you do that.
So you've touched on something, and I think all of you have touched on it or different, like in different ways, shapes, or forms. The major difference is expectations, right? I know exactly what to expect from my family, or that one of the reasons that I'm so willing to attack them or channel my anger toward them is because my expectations from my family is what? Higher or lower? Higher. And they didn't react the way that I expected them to. The reason I don't attack strangers is because I have no idea what. I have no idea how they're going to react. Like, is this guy going to pull a gun on me? Is this guy going to physically assault me? Is he going to attack me at the same level? Is he going to insult me in a way that I have no idea on how I'm going to respond to? And this is why the Prophet he said, "Khayrukum khayrukum li ahli." The best of you is the one that is best to their family. Meaning that I essentially should keep my expectations where with my family? Low. I should keep my expectations as low as possible. Why? Because every time they do something for me, I'm going to be what? No, for me, not against me. Like her, like, why'd you bring me that flower? Right? I'm gonna feel grateful. Now think about that. And if I set those expectations low, and every time they do something for me, and every time I feel in my heart that I'm grateful, these little grateful moments, what's gonna happen? Right? They're gonna accumulate, and my entire attitude and outlook toward them is gonna change. But if I set my expectations high, like, well, okay, well, no, she's supposed to wash my clothes and she's supposed to give me breakfast and she's supposed to do this and she's supposed to do that, or he's supposed to do this. He's supposed to take care of this. And time after time, those expectations are broken. What happens? What are the feelings that start emanating toward that person? Disappointment, which leads to anger. And how do we know that setting low expectations is important? I'll share with you guys two hadith. One of them is hadith Aisha radiallahu anha, and this happened multiple times. It's not on one occasion. He sallallahu alayhi wasallam, he would be praying the night prayer, and what was she doing? She would be sleeping. She's narrating to us, telling us, I'd be sleeping, and my husband, the Prophet of Allah, sallallahu alayhi wasallam, was praying. He never said to her what? Get up and pray. I'm the Prophet of Allah. What are people going to say? Think about that. That he never woke her up. And the only times that we know that he would even be inclined to wake her up was when? The last 10 nights of Ramadan. So that's important to keep in mind. Also, the second hadith I want to share with you is a hadith of Barira. Barira was the servant of Aisha radiallahu anha. And he sallallahu alayhi wasallam, he asked her, he said, can you tell me something bad about Aisha? And she's like, well, I can only think of one thing. While she's kneading dough, she falls asleep. Like she'll be in the middle of doing something and she'll fall asleep. And she'll fall asleep so deeply that she won't realize that mice come and start gnawing, nibbling at the bread. How many times did he scold her? None. There's a difference between having low expectations and a high standard. Right. So when I say low expectations, it doesn't mean that I shouldn't have a high standard for my wife or my children or my family or these people. Right? It's important to have that high standard. But expectations are very different. Like what is a standard? A standard is like, no, like prayer needs to be made in our home. The Quran needs to be read. We need to have an Islamic environment, right? These are all things. But to have a standard, that means that I have to help create that, right? That it becomes very different. Expectations means that they have to do it. But if I have a standard, it means that I have to create that standard. And how do I create it? By building a relationship, by talking, by teaching, by encouraging, by, you know what I mean? Like by reaffirming time and time and time again. Yes.
But all of these statements, are these in regards to like the outward display of anger? Because inside
Sure.
is it mostly outward display? Because anger, I think that's a natural emotion. Especially with studying psychology, I think there are healthy ways of
Sure. So what do you think?
mitigating that. So I feel like all these statements is more for like outward display, but what to do
Sure.
inward or how to tackle that.
So over here, all of this. So basically he's brought like maybe 20, 25 statements, and only one of the statements, I'm sorry. Here. So out of all of the statements that he brings, he throws this one in the middle. Why? Not exactly. Why do you think he throws this in?
To illustrate that anger will happen, it's okay, just don't be crazy about it.
Right. So the problem is the anger itself. And this hadith is the one that is meant to give us context. That all of these different narrations and all of these different statements, what is the thing that is prohibited? What is the thing that is problematic? Not controlling it, not channeling it, right? This is the issue. The problem isn't the anger in and of itself, right? Because anger is an emotion, just like joy, just like, and it doesn't even mean that there is going to be, it doesn't even have to be appropriate. Yeah. So for example, if you're going out, your friends, they threw you like, hey, listen, I want to take you out to eat today. In general, you're supposed to feel what? Happy, right? You should feel happy, but all of a sudden you feel angry. Is it a wrong emotion? No, right? There's no wrong emotion. There's nothing wrong with that. But I am now, the Sharia is going to obligate me and it's going to hold me accountable at what point? When I act on it. and I can act on it in different ways, right? Even happiness. Happiness is something, is there a way for me to express it in a haram way? Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Like, just because I'm happy, it doesn't mean I can walk up to a strange woman and tell her she's attractive, right? It's not appropriate. That doesn't make it permissible. Just because I'm happy, it doesn't allow for these things shar'an. But that feeling that I'm having is completely normal. It's healthy. It's okay. There's nothing wrong with it. Again, there's no such thing as a wrong emotion. There's no such thing as an inappropriate emotion. It's how all of these emotions are channeled. Because even if you look, it's talking about rage, it's talking about selfishness, it's talking about how all of these things how they start. The type of anger that is problematic is the type of anger that is consuming, the type of anger that's been suppressed, the type of anger, you know what I mean? Like, this is the one that's problematic, because when I suppress my anger, or when I'm raging, why is that an issue? I'm sorry. I have no self-control at that point, right? It's going to channel in a way where I have no control. It's going to erupt in a way where I can't do it, versus just being angry and telling if I've ordered food, right, and the waiter has come to me the third time with the wrong thing that I've ordered, I'm very naturally, I'm going to be what? I'm going to be upset. I have a choice now. I can be like, hey, you keep messing up my order. Can you please bring another waiter? Right? That's one choice. What have I managed to do? I've managed to express my anger. I've managed to express my disposition. Or I have a choice. I can be like, what are you, an idiot? Why don't you write this down? Do you know what you're doing? Right? Is that a good way of dealing and expressing? No, it's not a healthy way of doing that. Yeah. I mean, there's always a better way, right? But there's also a wrong way of doing things. Yeah, no. Yeah. Yeah. Mm. Mm. Yeah. 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 No, because you have to say something, right? You have and this is the lesson I want everybody to take home. When I'm angry, I have to share that, right? I have to, even if I'm only sharing it with myself, and just saying I'm really angry, right? I mean, it doesn't always feel like the best thing to do at the time, but if I don't embrace whatever it is that I'm feeling, and I don't recognize whatever it is that I'm feeling, how am I going to channel it? If I don't know if I'm happy, if I don't know if I'm sad, if I don't know if I'm angry, I have to recognize those emotions. Even Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, when he talks about these things, one of the first things that he tells us to do is to recognize the emotion. You know, if somebody breaks into my car, the first thing I don't want to hear is, oh, just say la hawla wa la quwwata illa billah. Right? This is the first thing I want to hear. The first thing I want to hear is a reinforcing of my feelings, like, man, that must suck. I'm really sorry that you went through that. Alhamdulillah, I'm glad you're okay though. And it could have been a lot worse, right? You know, ease into it a little bit. But that validation of feelings is something that you find even in the Sunnah. It's something that you find in the Quran. It doesn't say to dismiss them, but you have to validate them, and then you incorporate and you allow that person to return back to Allah. Yes.
In terms of context, that validation is not required for a lot of people, because a lot of people, when their calamity hits, the first thing they say is alhamdulillah. And that's an idea of again, it's levels. It's like if you are someone who's, you believe enough in Allah to be able to rationalize yourself and validate your feelings and anger, that's great. That's one level of it. Yeah. And then there's people who are more in terms of belief, because as much as we think about Quran and saying subhanallah and all these other things like that as just saying things, the words do have a protective effect spiritually. So
for sure.
So if you're at that level, kind of, you're in a preventative state where you try to prevent yourself from reaching a certain level of things to even have to control or mitigate or get to that point.
So I agree with everything you said.
So
yeah. No, I'm saying, listen, everything you're saying is absolutely right. And this is not the problem or the issue that I have. The issue I have is from the third party. You understand? So what happens is this third party will now spiritually overdose you. You know what I mean? For me, everything you're talking about, this is my personal journey, right? I want to strive to get to that point. I want to strive to get where anytime a calamity or something strikes, I have developed that spiritual immunity where now I can embrace it, right? I can embrace that and say, what happened is best for me. And this is what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wills. And there's something better that will come out of this, right? This is the level that I want to work toward. Can somebody drag me into that level? Can someone force me into that level? Like, no, akhi, embrace it. It's okay that, you know, your family died. Like, it's like, say, mashallah. Like, say, la hawla wa la quwwata illa billah. Remember Allah, akhi. It could have been worse. Okay, how do I know he's even there? Right? My job as a Muslim, as an onlooker, as a third party, even if that person is at that highest level, is to what? Is to validate. Right? That's the first step. I have to, as an onlooker, right? This is my job. My job isn't to like spiritually imbibe this person. My job, I can spiritually reinforce them after I validate. Right? So I'm talking from here, I'm talking about the perspective of the third party. As for the individual, we should always be striving. I should always try to better myself spiritually. I should always try to spiritually inoculate myself. I should try to spiritually vaccinate myself from all of these things and strive for that. I mean, that's the purpose of all these discussions, right? How to control anger, how to channel it, how to deal with these things. But the problem comes in is like we look at it, it's really frustrating for me is when many of us look at these tazkiyah things, we look at it as an application toward others. Right? Like, so we'll take all this stuff and we'll be like, Akhi, don't you know the hadith about not getting angry? It's like, okay, you missed the point. Like, the hadith was for me. Like, you know, it's for me to better myself. It's not for me to use as a spiritual bat against other people. Like, it's not appropriate at all. It's not appropriate at all. And unfortunately, like we have fallen into this as a community. When it comes to like these issues of tazkiyah and anger and control and emotion, we're so fixated on others that many times we overlook ourselves and our own problems and our own issues. So when I was talking about the people who have the most issues with their family, it's often, more often than not, it's the first row. And it's upsetting. It's upsetting because am I praying properly if that's the case? You know, inna salata tanha anil fahsha'i wal munkar. Like the prayer was supposed to protect me from these things. It was supposed to be that spiritual inoculation that's making me a better person. Why are my relationships not getting better? Why do I get angry when people are taking my place? Because I pray here every day. I thought the masajid lillah. I thought they were for Allah. When did it become mine? When did it become my uncles or my fathers? And it's sad. It's sad. There are so many people. When I came here, it was the first time I had heard from anyone. It's like, oh, you know, I'm one of the first people to put like a brick in this masjid. You know, like I put down the first brick in the masjid. And I was like, did you put down the brick so I would give you special treatment? I don't, you know, did you do it for the special treatment or did you do it for Allah? Because if you did it for Allah, why would you be telling me? Because you want to use the employee bathroom? No, you know, and when you give people's perspective like this, all of a sudden it makes all of us kind of step back. And you know, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala protect us from that. And the reason, you know, I share some of these stories is because I don't want us to become like that. I don't want us to come in and be like, man, I was there when the class first started. Or I was there when, you know, this, or I was there for that, and I was there for this event. Or like when this happened, I used to do that. And then we use this as social capital so that we can get our way in certain things. Well, I've been volunteering for 5 years. And what? Like, you want a cookie? Like why were you volunteering? Were you volunteering to come and tell me? And even if you're coming to tell me, like, is there pay that you want? Like, I don't know. I don't understand. What is the purpose of telling me? What am I going to do with that information? And all of this comes back to the conversation around ikhlas and sincerity. Just because I've been a part of something, just because I've contributed something, all of those things I did, those were my opportunities to contribute. They weren't supposed to be my method of gaining social capital so that I can get special treatment for different things in different programs. Yeah, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala protect us. But so alhamdulillah, like I'm glad, like these are a number of points that I really did want to touch on concerning anger and rage. Yes. Just walk away. Just walk away. Try again. Because the first, I think this one lesson I drive home time and again. What is the first step of me advising someone? Build a relationship. That's it. If I don't know this person, I can't just walk up to someone like, hey, Akhi, you didn't pray right. Or like I see a sister walking by, hey sister, you need to fix your hijab. She's gonna be like, what? Like, yeah, like who are you? What are you like? What? Like, why are you talking to me? You know what I mean? Like these things are very important for us to. He sallallahu alaihi wasallam, we overlook the first 40 years of his life. Like we look at when Nubuwwah started. Like, what was he doing for 40 years? He was building relationships. People trusted him. They wanted to make him a leader. Like people left things with him. People entrusted him with information. People entrusted him with things. If I want someone to listen to me, I need to build a relationship with them. And once I build a relationship, I know exactly where they are mentally. If I tell the sister to wear hijab and she's like, she doesn't even pray. Is it going to benefit her? Like mashallah, I have her covering her head now, but she's still not praying. There are priorities. There are things that are very important for us. There's some people who come here and some kids, and I'm telling you, Na'mas, there are some kids who come here and they only come here for social reasons. They don't even have an attachment to Islam. They don't. Where are our priorities? And the reason we don't know? Because we didn't build any relationships with them. Like we don't know any of the kids. We just assume that we see them and what? They're okay. Well, they're in the masjid, alhamdulillah. Yeah, that's part of it. I'm not going to deny that. We should try to make the masjid an attractive place as possible. But part of making it attractive is to build those relationships with these kids so that we want them to feel like they're part of the community. We want to make sure that they're inheriting the masjid and they're going to be the next generation. What are we doing to train them?
I would like to ask you one question. Sometimes, I think sometimes we should show our anger like in a severe way to set the boundaries.
No, setting boundaries is fundamentally important.
Because most of the time the relatives might do something,
Sure.
don't like it.
Yeah.
Might warn them.
Yeah.
Next time.
No, so the thing is that everybody deserves a chance, right? Everybody deserves a chance. So is it possible that somebody crosses their boundary with me? Yeah, for sure. And I can give them the excuse the first time that what? They didn't know, right? They didn't know that this was my boundary. This is something I'm not going to talk about. I'm not comfortable talking about this. I don't really know you like that. And this is not something I want to talk about with you. So this person crosses the boundary the first time. Then I'm like, hey, listen, I'm not really comfortable talking about that. I've now set the boundary. So when it happens again, I have a right to what? I now have a right to be angry. I have a right to get angry. I have a right to respond like, hey, listen, I told you, I don't like talking about this. Why are you bringing it up again? And I can be a little bit more aggressive. Setting boundaries is my responsibility. It's not other people's responsibility. And we overlook this quite often, that when we don't set our own boundaries, we get angry when people cross them, even though we never what? We never made them clear. Like we never told them. Like, okay, these are the things I don't want to talk about. These are the times I don't want to see you. I haven't made any of these things clear. And now I'm upset and I'm angry that people are going past them. And what do? I'm just going home and I'm getting angry. I'm like, oh, everybody's taking advantage of me. And this especially happens with volunteers. So you'll have volunteers who come, they'll stop volunteering. All of a sudden, they'll just stop volunteering. And then you'll go up to them and be like, what happened? Man, it's so much work. They just keep giving me stuff and like, I'm getting overwhelmed. It's like, well, did you tell them it was too much? No, it's fi sabilillah. So fi sabilillah caused you to quit? Does that make sense? Fi sabilillah should be empowering. Fi sabilillah should mean that you feel more spiritually enriched. But if you're doing it for the wrong reasons, and if you're shy now to tell people no, this should have made you stronger. This should have made you more open. It should have made you more forward. What happened? And many times it's our intention. Well, many times it's our intention. This is why it's important to always go back and review and renew our intentions. But if people are crossing the boundaries or like crossing like relationship boundaries, we should be the first ones to blame ourselves. Because did I set the boundary? And once I set the boundary, did I do what? Did I maintain it? Because we as humans, we're constantly pushing, right? We're constantly pushing. Even when there's a 35 speed zone, how fast do we drive?
45.
We'll go like 40. You know what I mean? We'll go 40. And we're like, okay, it's 45. Okay, we'll go 50. Why? Because we as humans, it's very natural for us to push our boundaries. Like we want to. We like pushing our boundaries because it tells me how much space I have to work. And I think this is a very natural human thing that all of us want to try to expand. We want to see how much room we have to navigate.
Sometimes it doesn't make sense.
What?
3 lane, it says no school, it's not, right? So,
I mean, it's your car, man. Go ahead. As long as I'm not getting a ticket. So any other questions, or we'll end here, inshallah. Allah protect us. خلاص, I'll see all of you next week, inshallah. Wallahu a'lam wa sallallahu ala khayri khalqi nabina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam.